Hello and welcome to this week's agenda. I'm Eugene Chausovsky and I'm here with Nate Hughes to discuss security relations between Russia and the U.S. So Nate, this week saw the return of Vladimir Putin to the Russian presidency. And this return comes as there's been some pretty heated rhetoric and contention between the U.S. and Russia over BMD plans in Europe. Already we've seen Putin cancel his visit to the U.S. for the G8 summit. This comes after the Russia-NATO summit was canceled over this very issue. So what are the dynamics behind this contention between the U.S. and Russia over BMD?
Well, for Russia, BMD is more of a convenient and rhetorically powerful tool for really pushing back more comprehensively on Western encroachment on the Russian periphery. So Russia is opposed to these missile defense installations slated for Romania in 2015 and Poland in 2018. But it's opposed primarily to the U.S. troops and the U.S. military hardware rather than the specific role that they fill, which is missile defense. And it's opposed primarily to the security relationship that represents and the potential for that relationship to be expanded upon in the future right on Russia's doorstep.
Right, and already we've seen Russia make a number of countermoves, to these BMD plans. It's built up its own military and weapons presence in the likes of Kaliningrad, in Belarus, and also recently in Transnistria. So, and at the same time, it's also been building up its own military bloc, the CSTO, sort of as a counter to NATO. So, how do you see that playing into the overall relationship?
Well, Russia's confronted with its perennial geopolitical problem, which is its enormous size and its effectively undefensible land borders. So it confronted this problem during the Soviet era with sheer mass, which was made possible with not just Russian, but the Soviet republics and the Warsaw Pact and those demographic and industrial bases that Russia now lacks. And in fact, it faces some very serious demographic problems moving forward. So Russia is now looking at reestablishing influence and domination over its periphery through more indirect means and through creating new means of leverage that don't require large sustained deployments of Russian troops, large combat formations, and large internal security formations in those other countries.
Right, and we've seen that the location of these buildups is really important and strategic as well. I mean, Kaliningrad being sandwiched between Poland and Lithuania, Belarus also on the border with Poland and other Central European countries, and then of course Transnistria is very close to Romania, all of these countries being key components of the US BMD system.
From the US perspective, the Russian complaint is it's harassing because clearly the system is not oriented towards or large enough or capable of dealing with the Russian strategic deterrent. But Russia's also got a point in that, these are being positioned in a way to defend against a hypothetical Iranian ICBM threat that, is at best years down the road if the Iranians really push the edge there. It's also an enormous investment in technology that has inherent applicability to missile defense against a larger strategic deterrent. So Russia is both concerned about the long-term implications and doing what it can to slow things down, and also focused on sowing discontent where it can within the already fractious NATO alliance.
But at the same time, we've also seen that Russia's own military and industrial complex has faced its challenges as well, right?
Right. The Chinese, in fact, essentially bankrolled the Russian defense industry for much of the post-Soviet period. What the Russian defense industry has done has been able to leverage the cutting-edge work being done by the Soviets at the collapse to this day, and also expand into lower-end markets with these higher-end technologies. And at the same time, it's created large and diffuse reliance on the Russian defense industry for the maintenance and upgrades of systems sold both during the Soviet era and the post-Soviet era around the world. So these exports are essential to Russia's sustaining its own industrial base for military and technological development. Russia's challenge is the way in which it's been reliant on intellectual work done under the Soviets. So today, Russia is also looking to purchase French-built Mistral helicopter carriers and other Western technology, particularly in the higher end, more technological, sophisticated sort of way that the West has excelled at both in the late Cold War and since, that Russia's really struggling with its lack of a strong intellectual base to innovate and develop new products.
And we've also seen the crash of the Sukhoi Superjet, for instance. That happened pretty recently as well.
Right. So the problem for Sukhoi is the Superjet 100 was essentially its premier product for the civilian commercial airline industry, that market. Its challenge was already immense, coming online late against the already very popular and established Embraer E-Series, which has been done very well even in the high-end Western and American markets. Coming now, the Superjet has a lot of buyers already lined up in a lower sort of edge of the market, but it's obviously a very delicate time for any airline developer to lose a plane like this.
Right. So how do you see these kinds of factors playing into the wider U.S.-Russia relationship, especially when it comes to BMD?
Well, it's the technological innovation and the challenge that Russia has had with evolving its defense industry towards the 21st century, and its need to, even now, continue to pull in, as best it can, Western expertise and influence to really modernize and bring it into the 21st century. Missile defense is probably one of the most difficult things being done in the military sphere right now. It's an immense technical challenge and entails a broad spectrum of very difficult challenges getting that all to work. So when Russia sees the U.S. pursuing BMD, it doesn't just see the U.S. pursuing a weapon system that it's long opposed. It was the U.S. that withdrew from the ABM treaty and really pushed forward with this unilaterally under the administration of George W. Bush. It's also this very high-end pursuit that Russia knows it can't compete with directly that I think leaves a lingering distaste and concern in the Russian mind.
Right, so it's important from a technological level, but also from a geopolitical one.
Exactly. It's reflective of a much healthier and more robust industrial base and military industrial base.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much, Nate, and thank you for joining us for this week's agenda.